So the project that we're talking about today, it's called Adios Fatso, and the project was created because of the pandemic era lockdowns. So what's the story of this? How did it come about, and what was the evolution like from idea to reality?
Yeah, absolutely. So we got to go back to like maybe March, April 2020. Everyone's going nuts. No one knows what's going to happen. Anxiety levels are through the roof. You got to stay locked in. You got to stay inside and find a way to not lose your mind. So that said, the only way to communicate with like anyone you knew was through like the internet. And at the time, like Instagram was a big thing. And that said, everyone there was like a thing going on Instagram where people challenge each other for like workouts, paintings, whatever, artwork, whatnot. And one of those challenges was like I had a friend that challenged me like, you got to write a song each day, and with the purpose of putting it on like Instagram stories, which at the time had like a 30-second limit. So
Hmm.
you have to create a song that will be under 30-second limit, not think about it, off the cuff, and just go with it. So my buddy was challenging me on that, and I would challenge back, and he will show me his song, and I'll show him my song, and so on. So a bunch of days went by, and after a while, we had a big like stack of songs, accumulated in my phone for that purpose. And a few months went by, and my buddy's like, "I like the songs a lot. Why don't we record them?" And I'm like, "It was just for fun. Like, it wasn't never like a serious thing. Like,
Hmm.
it was very casual and whatnot. We didn't look further than just doing it for to keep our like brains occupied at the time." So I was like, he insisted, and I was like, "Okay, let's." I've never collaborated with you. This is a buddy of mine called Marco. He's a childhood buddy of mine from Venezuela. He lives now in Colorado. And I was like, okay, this could be a good opportunity to do a collab with you, which I've never done before. And I've known you for so many years. He's a musician as well. And so I told him, like, I'll do it only if you play the drums of the tracks because he's the drummer. And he's like, I'm down, dude. I have everything here at home. I have like a little interface with microphones and whatnot. So I'm down. I was like, okay, cool, let's do it. So we started working towards that. And like at the end of the day, like we had a bunch of songs. We recorded them. We had fun doing it. We learned I like how to record at home because that's the other thing. It's not like we knew what we were doing. We were like learning as we went. So the end result was the No Cap album with 11 songs.
And so it's just it's interesting to me as a music fan how much adjustments musicians had to make because of not necessarily the end of the world, but definitely the pausing of the world, right? So everything just
Mhm.
kind of stopped for a time. So it's always very interesting as a music fan, somebody who's not a musician at all, to see how all of y'all adjusted to getting your art out there because the art doesn't stop. Creativity doesn't stop, right? You still have to feed that beast. So
Yeah.
what was your music like prior to the pandemic? What kind of projects were you working with prior to that?
So I play in a band called Crew Miracle, and it's a like a rock and roll band, and we had been practicing once or twice a week regularly. We have our shows, the regular stuff that bands do. But because of the pandemic, that kind of was put on pause for
Right.
that time.
Mhm.
So I took the time, the locked in time to learn how to record at home because I had had like a bad experience with DAWs before. So I was like, I'll never get into that ever again. So because of the pandemic conditions, it made me go, and the technology has advanced so much to that point
Mhm.
that it made it like easy for me to like get into it again. So like even though this is a bad thing to say, I think I like had something positive out coming from the pandemic type thing. So
Right.
yeah,
And getting back to the current project, I got to ask you this cuz when asked what genre your music is, your
good question.
your answer is quote DIY punk rock and a broad musical sensibility fueled by dark humor and a dose of existentialism. Can you expound upon that?
Yeah. So basically everything you just said, it's true. So that's why I like that description. but I'm trying to like break like put it into like something shorter. And I think my conclusion, and this is very, very, very broad. I think I'm calling it like we just play American rock music. And that's it. I don't care. But to your point, what you just read, I think that's very like to the point. You know.
I was like, man, that's the first time I've ever gotten syllable soup when asked about genre. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
But I loved it, man. I was like, geez, there's
Yeah,
even.
because I was trying to be as thorough that as I could with it, you know?
Yeah,
Because I know, and it's already happened. People will throw you in the punk rock like bucket.
right.
People will throw you into the indie bucket. I've been thrown into the garage bucket. And I'm like, yeah, we're all of that, but we're not just one of those, you know?
Right. And in today's day and age with Google, I mean, Google needs it to be so streamlined. Like, I know artist friends of mine who Google will call them folk, and they're not folk, not even close to folk. And like, then you have to fight with Google, like one of the biggest corporations in the world, to try to change your classification to meet what you really
Yeah.
are. Um, so where does the name Adios Fatso come from? Where'd y'all come up with that?
Great. That has like a very cool backstory. So so during pandemic, then again, I gained like 25 pounds like in a month. So a buddy of mine, shout out to him, Luis Castellanos. He's a fan of The Simpsons, so he watches The Simpsons with his kids all the time. So he sent me a clip where like Homer is trying to send a text message to Bart, and he sends the first one, and it doesn't go through. Second one doesn't go through. Third one doesn't go through, and then Bart replies, "Adios, Fatso," and that's the end of the conversation. So my buddy sent me that, like, look, this is for you, and so it became like a very like a lighthearted type of joke because of my overweight and whatnot. So we kept saying it, saying it, saying it, saying it, and it stuck. And at the end of the day, I was like, dude, that's stuck throughout all this time. Let's go with that name.
It's amazing, man. I love hearing the origin stories of bands and things like that. Like,
It's
um,
crazy. It's
I have
crazy.
I have
Yeah.
another podcast with a friend of mine named Katie Lynn, and we're always making up names on the show of like punk bands and stuff. Like, we
Oh,
were
there you go.
we were talking about the Eclipse in one episode, and the words "Path of Totality" came up, and I'm like, oh my god, that's a great punk band name.
Absolutely.
Coming to the
Absolutely.
stage, Path of Totality. But anyway,